How's everybody? Yeah, good. Um, get your outline for tonight, and let's see if I can find where I'm at. We last the previous 2 weeks we were talking about Philippians 4:8, where it says, "Finally, brother, whatever things are true, whatever things are noble, whatever things are just, whatever things are pure, whatever things are lovely, whatever things are of good report, if there be any virtue, if there be any praise, think on these things." I got a part of that I want to talk about a little bit tonight. But I also want to say, just based on the information that I have accumulated over the years, um, I thought a lot about doing a series after the first of the year that has to do with managing our thoughts, our thought life. And this Philippians 4:8 will be a part of that when I do. So you'll get a whole lot more information than what you're able to get here on a Wednesday night. I'll ask that question again that I had asked last week, I believe it was. I don't know if you've gone back through the fourth chapter of Philippians, but what is a big takeaway for the book of Philippians, chapter 4, that you know of, or any that you want to share with the rest of us? I won't go through the list again, but there's a lot of good things that Paul says and addresses in that fourth chapter of Philippians. A lot of good things. Remember, he said, "I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength." That's where he talks about the peace of God that passes all understanding, and the God of peace being with you. There's just a lot of good stuff in there. But tonight, I wanted to move on to the next word in that verse 8, the word lovely. And it basically means thoughts toward love. We've talked about the peace of God, and I'm hoping that this study has got you thinking about what you're thinking about. It's my prayer that all of us would clean up some thoughts and think a little differently, think a little bit more like God would have us think as we do life. When our thoughts are basically the seeds of our action, right? You normally don't do anything without thinking about it first. What you think about will strongly influence how you respond or what you do. Basically, it all starts in your thoughts. If you don't like the way things are going in your life and in your way of thinking, maybe it's time to make a change. But most people that are losing this battle in their mind, in their thoughts, couldn't really tell you why they feel like they're losing at life. But it's because they don't have control or any organization to their thoughts and their way of thinking. Part here that I want to skip. We get to decide what we think. We can't control what others think about us, right? But I can control what I think about what other people say or do. I can't control what you think about me, but I can control the way that I respond to what you think or say to me. I can't control what other people say about me, but I can control what I think in response to what they say about me. We can't control our circumstances, but we can control our thoughts in every situation. I'm just going to ask you this question, and I know we're on Facebook tonight too, but how many of you have watched J.D. Vance in a debate or in one of them lopsided interviews by secular media? Show me your hands again. I love that guy. I love the way he thinks and the way he responds to things. And when I grow up, I want to be just like him. I just think that it's something that we can all do. And if we can't do it, we can definitely do better at it than what we have. And that is to respond to things based on what we know to be true about God, not just based on what somebody says, right? Have you ever heard the old saying, if you keep thinking what you always thought, you'll keep getting what you always got? It's true. That's the way that works. Sometimes we just have to put ourselves into a position where we recognize, I need to change the way that I think. I just need to think differently than what I have. It's why God included these verses in the book of Philippians. He said, whatever's true, think on these things. Whatever is noble, just, pure, and now lovely, think on these things, and the God of peace will be with you. So whatever things are true. Remember, we talked about this last week or week before last. Just if you can just limit your thoughts to true thoughts, it's a really good place to start. Because most of the stuff we think about, we worry about, and sometimes the stuff we even talk about is not true. We don't know that it's not true, but we don't know that it is true, but we still talk about it anyway. People get worried about things that are just not true things to worry about. Does anybody have an example of a true thought from a biblical perspective that you've decided to think? Sorry? Jesus is Lord. That's a good true thought to keep in mind. And then there's those right thoughts or just thoughts, that I do what is right, not just what is easy or convenient. And just because something is legal doesn't make it right. Remember, we went through all that. Pure thoughts, we talked about last week. Pure thoughts are those thoughts that are unpolluted, undefiled, unalloyed by the influence of this world. Thoughts that are pure produce pure motives and actions that can be pleasing to God. Pure just means that we're not influenced by other outside distractions or outside influences. We have a pure mind concerning the things of God in the way that we should be. Okay, so in your outline there is under C, actually, lovely thoughts are thoughts toward love. And when we say the word lovely, or we hear the word lovely, we think of pretty or pleasing. It's a lovely dress. It's not something that men use a lot. Not the men I know, anyway. Don't use the word lovely a lot. But it's derived from two Greek words. One is prophiles, which is a preposition that means toward. And the other is a noun that is the word love. So when it says lovely here, it actually means thoughts toward love. And so in addition to your thoughts being true, noble, right, and pure, we should purposely be thinking thoughts toward love. Do you have an example in your mind already of a good thought that is toward love? Anybody? Huh? Jesus loves me. Yeah.
I was thinking, when you look at someone and you feel compassion, as Christ feels compassion when he looks at us.
I don't know how you guys are, and maybe you don't deal with this at all, but oftentimes I meet somebody new or I see somebody new, and they remind me of somebody I knew previously, and I automatically tag them with the same personality or character that person before. You ever done that? I know what he's about. I don't like that. I remember meeting a guy at Lenexa Christian Center, and I thought, I am not getting close to him. He was one of my friends from high school to the T. And I thought, I'm just going to stay away from him. Well, come to find out, I was wrong. And he was just one of the greatest Christian guys I knew. And then I found out, other stuff, and it was not quite so good. But, we shouldn't have judgmental thoughts. If you want to control your thoughts towards somebody else, hold off on the judging, hold off on the criticism, and just create some thoughts toward love towards somebody else. John 13:35, Jesus said, by this shall all men know that you are my disciples, if you have love one to another. Love is a very important part of our relationship with God, and he says it's also a very important part of our relationship with other people. Thinking lovely thoughts that are toward love, produces godly character. You want to know how Jesus maintained his character? all through the 3.5 years of his ministry and the years prior to that as he was growing up. It all had to do with him controlling his thoughts. And if there was ever anybody whose thoughts were always toward love, it was Jesus. You ever heard this one? Sow a thought, reap an action. Sow an action, reap a habit. Sow a habit, reap a character. Sow a character, reap a destiny. And this is really where the battle takes place. It's where the war happens. We all have sinful desires. All are born with a tendency to sin. And there's this ongoing war between the flesh and the spirit all the time. Romans 7:23 says, I see another law in my members warring against the law of my mind and bringing me into captivity to the law of sin, which is in my members. O wretched man that I am, who shall deliver me from the body of this death? So there's this ongoing tendency to rebel or to sin or to go the wrong direction in our relationship with God, which totally affects our relationship with other people. So I'm going to ask you again and see if you got another thought. What is an example of a thought toward love? I'm sitting down because Doug. You know what I think of every morning when I see the sunrise? Lamentations 3:22 and 23 is of the Lord's mercies we are not consumed. They are new every morning. Just as sure as you see the sun coming up in the morning, you know that the mercies of God have been renewed in your life. And that is an amazing thought to me. You know, and a thought toward love might be, you know, you said you were driving and you see the sun come up. Is when you're driving and people aren't driving like they should, then you can also use Lamentations 3:22 and 23 and just say, Lord, show your new mercy to these non-driving individuals today. You know, that's something that we can do. Here's the problem. Part of us wants to love, and there's always a part of us that wants to hate. Based on that Romans 7:23 and 24. Part of us wants to give, and part of us wants to take. Part of us wants to forgive, and part of us wants to get even or hold a grudge. Part of us wants to be generous, and part of us wants to be selfish. And we struggle with this, and how we think and how we manage our thoughts are always going to have an influence on which direction we go with those things. The only way you get these things right is based on our love for God and a new way of thinking toward love for others. That's those two things go together. If we can keep our thoughts in the right place and grow in our relationship with God, it'll also help in our relationship with other people. Number one, my love for others is a reflection of my love for God. That is a thought toward love. My love for others is a reflection of my love for God. Matthew 22:37, Jesus said, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and great commandment. The second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. You'll never get the second one right without getting the first one right. In other words, we'll never love other people like we should love other people if we've not learned how to love God the way that God says we should learn to love him. Everything about God leads us to pure love. And now people look at the 10 Commandments and they say, well, that's not love. That's just being bossy, telling us what to do. You go back and look at those 10 Commandments. There's 4 of them that are toward God and 6 of them toward our relationship with other people. And every one of them have something to do with love, our relationship with God and with other people. I've heard Jewish scholars say that basically the commandments of God, the 10 Commandments of God, are in terms of marriage. It's like marriage commitment stuff. It's like a marriage vow. It's like a marriage relationship between a husband and wife. And that's the kind of relationship that God wants to have with us. Everything about God leads to pure love. So here's the question. Do my thoughts satisfy God, or do they satisfy my sinful nature? And I'm not just trying to gossip or anything like that, but how do we see people around us trying to satisfy the sinful nature as opposed to satisfying God? How does that look in our generation? A lot of selfishness, a lot of self-centeredness. There's a lot of, my favorite here lately, and a word that I use a lot, is entitlement. People just feel so entitled these days. It's amazing how you can get to that place. So my thoughts will either satisfy God or they'll satisfy my sinful nature. 2 Timothy 3:1 says, in the last days, perilous times will come. Men will be lovers of their own selves, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, without natural affection, truce breakers, false accusers, without self-control, brutal, despisers of those that are good, traitors, heady, high-minded, lovers of pleasure more than lovers of God. All to satisfy the sinful nature. And then it'll even go on to say that they'll have a form of godliness, but deny the power thereof. What does that mean? A form of godliness? Kind of sounds like they're known as, church people. So it's something that even infiltrates the church, this sinful way of thinking and wrong direction. As my love for God increases, my need to satisfy my sinful desires will decrease. I don't think that's in your outline anywhere, but you have to know that that is an absolute truth. As my love for God increases, my need to satisfy my sinful desires will decrease. Sinful desires can keep us from God, or God can keep us from sinful desires. It all depends on how we manage our thoughts and which way we allow our thoughts to go. Remember, the general rule is don't just follow your thoughts, lead them. Learn to lead your thoughts. Fighting and arguing come from that human sinful nature also. In James 4:1, it says that arguments and war come from the lust that war in your members. Now, I don't know if you've noticed or not. I think everybody in this room has got kids. I think. If you've not noticed, you don't really have to teach your children how to fight and argue, do you? It's not like you have a little class on Monday evening and say, we're going to learn how to fight and argue today. It just comes to them naturally. They're born with that nature. Some of them more than others have that nature. It's easy to fight and argue. You'll have to decide to think thoughts toward love. You'll have to work at that. It doesn't come easy. It doesn't come natural to a sinful nature. Another sinful desire is a need for recognition or exaltation. Is that in your outline? Did I put that in there? Matthew 6:5, Jesus said, when you pray, don't be like the hypocrites who act all religious to be seen of men. They have their reward. Always be careful of those who are looking for public recognition. God is watching. Now, I don't know if you really know that much about these areas. I don't see any of y'all as doing this, but just are constantly in need of recognition. It's like they're not complete unless somebody recognizes their accomplishment. It's like, I did this and you're not exalting me, and therefore you don't care. You know what I mean? That attitude, and it was the attitude of the Pharisees and the scribes, where they just needed to be up front all the time. They needed people to cheer at them when they walked in the streets, and they needed, to be told that they are, very religious and pious, and you're so special. It was that kind of thinking, and we look at that and we think, well, that doesn't really sound that bad. I mean, if you're really doing all the work. But the problem with that is it's not really generating thoughts toward love for others. It's always turning back to self. And don't raise your hand, but I wonder if anybody's ever felt like, I don't get the recognition I deserve. And not even at church. Dadgummit, they should at least say thank you. Look at all the stuff I do. I've been serving cookies with the best of them. But you see how that goes, right? Before you know it, you're like slamming the cookies on the counter. You don't appreciate me? Go fetch this cookie. Just give it a whirl. But it turns it back into self again. I did a lot of stuff in the years that I volunteered in church. I've taught classes. I've preached at special services on Friday nights and Saturday nights to singles, to seniors. Preached in nursing home for 4 or 5 years. That was very trying. I would go fill in for pastors. The latter years of my volunteer days, I'd go fill in for pastors. And I remember there was one time I went like 3 or 4 weeks where I didn't show up at church. This wasn't at Phil's church. This was at the church before that. I went 3 or 4 weeks. I was preaching in other churches, and I went to the nursing home, Delmar Gardens, the big one down there in Lenexa. I'd go over there, but usually I could go to church and then go over there, but they wanted me there the whole time for whatever reason. And the pastor saw me that morning, Sunday morning in church, and he said, "Oh, hey, look, who decided to finally join us again." And how would you feel? Did you ever see that man? He's big. I wouldn't punch him for anything.
I was going to say, did you help him up off the floor?
You know what? I turned my back on him. And a really good friend of mine who's a high-powered banker, he said, "Are you going to let him talk to you that way?" I said, "I don't owe him anything. I don't owe him anything at this point." But, I had volunteered at that church. All I'm saying is if you're not careful, even stupid stuff that other people do can turn everything back in here and make it into a position where I should exalt myself, right? And I don't think that's a healthy way to live at all. I think that was the way of the Pharisees and the scribes, the hypocrites. Jesus called them hypocrites to their face. They had to be bad. He tried to be nice a lot. Pride and arrogance are also a natural, sinful desire. The minute we start thinking that they can't do without us, we're getting into an area where we are no longer thinking thoughts toward love. We're thinking thoughts toward self. Luke 20, verse 46, Jesus said, "Beware the scribes which desire to walk in long robes and love greetings in the markets and the highest seats in the synagogues and the chief rooms at the feast." These are not the thoughts or the way of thinking toward love, except for a self-love. And they always want the best for them. They think they always deserve better than everybody else. The only way we can tell if you love God or someone else loves God is by the love you show toward other people. Did I read that verse to you already? By this, Jesus said, "All men shall know that you are my disciples." That is the love that you have one for another. That's really all that we have to show. That really proves where our heart is. I heard a story about Billy Graham, and he and his wife were in church, and the offering plate was coming, and he reached into his wallet, and he meant to pull out a $5 bill, but he pulled out a 20 and threw it in the plate instead. And he told his wife, he said, "Oh, I really just meant to give that $5 bill. I guess my reward will be greater now." And she said, "Oh no, in your heart you gave a $5 bill. You just lost 15. But I mean, you can see how easy it can be for us to think about self. Galatians 5:14 says, "By love we should serve one another. He said, all the law is fulfilled in one word: love your neighbor like yourself. And he goes on to say, walk in the Spirit. Because if you can't walk in the Spirit, if you're not walking in the Spirit, you'll never love your neighbor like yourself. Number 2, God's kind of love is toward people and not money. As my love or affection for God grows, my love of money diminishes. That's another thought toward love. God's kind of love is toward people and not money. 1 Timothy 6:10 says the love of money is the root of all evil, which while some have coveted after they have erred from the faith and pierced themselves through with many sorrows. It's not money that's evil. You hear people say that a lot, right? It's not money that's evil. It's the love of money that comes and brings about all kinds of evil. There are many that are swept away by the love of money. They give themselves to the acquisition of money while wasting the opportunity of appreciation in relationship. Does that make sense? A lot of times we do things, or people do things for money when they should be doing it for relationship. The money is only temporary. Relationships can be forever, especially if you're influencing a relationship with Christ, with another person. Are my actions and love toward people, or is it toward money? How can we tell the difference? Y'all give me an answer. Tell me what you think. How can we tell the difference? Are my actions and love toward people or toward money? And these are still going to be good questions for you to think about and maybe write down for yourself. There might be some that you don't want to share with everybody, and I understand that, but we're talking about other people now. You can say whatever you want. I'm not asking very good questions, am I?
Well, that's a good question. I give the money away when it is spoken, when God speaks to me. And one time with $100, another time $5, and another time $20. But the thing is as Christians, if we can get to the place of where God is in control of my life, I'm going to be doing things for God that I'm not even thinking about doing for God, and it happens. And so it's not that I'm always looking to give money to somebody, but it just happens. The Lord just leads me there when He wants to do that. And I think that's Pastor. I think that's teaching me the compassion or the love or whatever it is that's in me versus of that other stuff that that no good Richard guy that I used to be. So I keep growing in that, Pastor. I think that for me that helps me a lot. Difference between love and money. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, go ahead.
So everyone, I think, knows that Gary drives a school bus. It's pretty easy to tell he doesn't drive it for the money. He talks about the kids all the time. Love of kids, I would say.
Wait a minute, that check looks pretty good every 2 weeks.
Have you ever been put into a position that was just really not you? Not something you'd be comfortable doing, but you did it just because of the effect that Christ has had on your life and your love or compassion, like Richard said, for somebody else. I'll tell you one of mine. I got a lot. There's a guy when I worked at Deluxe Check Printers that came, I don't know what they hired him to do, but one of the services brought him in, and he's in a wheelchair, paralyzed from the waist down. And I just happened to be walking by, and he said, "Can you help me go to the bathroom?" Like, I don't know what that means. I don't know. And I ended up helping him. I mean, it was just a matter of, helping him get his britches down and setting him down and then getting him back up and his britches up and back in the wheelchair. But I don't know that I've done foot washing before. And this was way more humbling than that. But if I would have just been me, no, you should have had somebody come with you to do this. You know what I mean? You've done that stuff before? Where somebody's hurting in such a way that there's no easy fix. Somebody just lost somebody they loved. Somebody died unexpectedly. Somebody died in a car crash on the way to work or whatever. And you have to be the person to say something to them? How awkward is that? And yet, I think the love and compassion that Christ puts on the inside of every one of us who are born again, if we can get our thoughts right, he can use us in moments like that to have an eternal impact on other people. And I think that's what we're here for. Remember, I think we were talking about it. We are the hands and feet of Jesus in this world. We are the voice of Jesus in this world. Okay, I'll skip some more stuff. Psalm 119:72. The law of your mouth is better to me than thousands of gold and silver coins. Does that feel right? Does that feel honest to think that thought? God, your law is better to me than thousands of pieces of gold and silver. If we can't say that honestly on the inside, if it's not a true thought for us, then we might need to rethink some things until it becomes a true thought. I remember pretty early on in my Christian life, and this was before I became a pastor here. I just remember thinking, if I keep going at the rate I'm going, I can retire probably in my mid to late 50s. I can be done. I can have plenty of money. I'll do all the stuff I want to do. And yet there was a part of me that said, that just doesn't sit right. There's something else that God has. And I'm more interested in what God has to say and use me to do than I am in wealth or retirement. I can honestly say that. And then this church started paying me so much money when I first started here. Never another problem. Is that true, Jane? Not a true thought. No, I mean, really, honestly, there's so much more that's more important than money. There just is. And sometimes we miss life because we don't do it right. We get our focus on something that's only temporary when God has got so much eternal stuff happening right in front of us. We should really be focused on the eternal. The more I love God, the more I want to give. You can't love God and worship money. It's just the way that it is. But that's not just a problem of the rich either. Y'all know what I'm saying? We always want to blame the rich on loving money. But there's people that are not rich who spend more time thinking about money and chasing money than most of the rich ever do. All right, number 3. This is another thought toward love. My family deserves thoughts toward love. As my love for God grows, my love for my family grows also. Our family is the first place we are to be providers. 1 Timothy 5:8 says, if anyone does not provide for his own house, for his own, especially those of his own household, he has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever or an infidel. Our family should be first. I mean, really, they should get the absolute best from us. Now, don't need any confessions here tonight, but I'll give you one. And it's something that I came to know several years ago. Y'all be merciful to what I'm about to say, okay? My superpower at church becomes my kryptonite at home. if that doesn't make any sense to you, I'll explain it a little bit. Yeah, at church, I mean, people say, "Hey, great sermon, loved it, you helped me, God spoke through you today. I get, gosh, love your shirts, you get all these compliments and all these great things that are going on. And people are asking you questions like, what do I do now? I mean, really, what do I do? And that's the superpower at church. But first time, Pastor Brother goes home and starts trying to be the boss, like at church, and have all the answers, it quickly becomes kryptonite. If you had $5 for every time my wife told me, I don't need you to do anything but listen. I have told her time and time again, I will drive to Baser and talk to your boss today. And she's pretty adamant. Just listen. I don't know why it is sometimes that our family, those closest to us, gets the worst of us. Gets the absolute worst of us. We say things to our spouses we'd never say to one of our friends. I mean, how does that work? Your family deserves your thoughts toward love. An example of love, compassion, responses, and conversation toward love is our responsibility. But we have to think it before we'll ever do it. We have to be thinking about it before we ever do it. I used to have this place when I was working at Deluxe, because it could be a pretty stressful job. When I'd head toward the house, there was one stoplight that I'd get to, and all of my cares, worries, stresses of the day stayed right there at that stoplight. I wouldn't let them go past that stoplight. I'd pick them up on my way back into work the next morning, but they would all stay right there. I wouldn't take any of that stuff home. Can you imagine over the years the stuff that I've done and learned and seen and talked about in church with other people and as a chaplain for the police department, the things that I've seen and heard and listened to, and I've always tried to just leave it outside of our house. I don't like burdening my family with the burdens that I have to bear or that I get paid to bear. Does that make sense? Because sometimes we want to include somebody else. We want somebody to tell us, yeah, you're being mistreated. Or yeah, that's a heavy load to bear. And I don't know that we're helping ourselves or the other people. If you think thoughts toward love, how you share information with your loved ones is going to be important. And how much information you share with your loved ones will be important. Galatians 6:9, let us not be weary in well-doing, for in due season we shall reap if we faint not. As we have therefore opportunity, let us do good unto all men, especially unto them who are of the household of faith. So from our family and our household to the household of faith, which is church. And to have thoughts toward love for people inside the church, I don't think could be any more important than what it is in our generation. The podcast that we've been doing and some of the people that we've got to talk to have brought some of this stuff out that people that have come to our church have just said, we just love it. I mean, we feel like we fit in. We feel like family. We feel like we are just loved when we first get there. And that's the way it should be. That is honestly the way that it should be in any church at any time. And yet I've had people come to me and say, well, we didn't come back to your church because we went all the way into the sanctuary and nobody ever said hi. And I thought, that's impossible. Do y'all know what I'm talking about? It is literally impossible to walk through that door out there into here and nobody say anything to you. I just don't see how that could be the case at all. Now, maybe they snuck in the side door or the back door or something, but it just, okay, just whatever. But I'm just saying, hospitality, being nice to people, it should happen in here naturally. People that I have met in Kenya was just like, I've known them my whole life. You know what I mean? I mean, I knew Pastor Bernard for, I don't know, 4 years almost before I ever seen him face to face. But what a moment in time. He just like my long lost brother, you know, a brother from a different mother. It was just amazing how close we felt to one another when we met. And that's what it should be among believers, among people in church. And we should take care of other people in church. You see a need, sometimes you can see it in their face, can't you? You can just see somebody is down, somebody is stressed out, or somebody is perplexed or sad. These are the people that we should show love toward. And we should be thinking thoughts toward love to help other people out. Let me ask you the question. Apparently y'all ain't talking much tonight, but how can we demonstrate the love of God toward our family? Anybody got any fresh ideas on that? What's a good way to demonstrate the love of God toward family?
Just to keep showing them the love of God, even though sometimes they purposely try to push your buttons and get you to say stuff or act a certain way that's not godly, but you don't let it happen.
J.D. Vance. Mike?
Yeah, I just made a note from last week that, when it's telling us when he knows we think, and what we think about is what we focus on and what we do. And either you or Phil last week said, look for these things in others. So if a family member is thinking about things that are honorable, right, pure, lovely, good repute, excellence, let them know that you see those behaviors in them and that you appreciate it.
Phil wasn't here last week, just so you know. I want the credit, Mike.
Wait just a second. Good job, Ron.
Thank you, Mike. That's what I was waiting for. See, here's the thing, and it happens in every family, and it happens in every marriage. You get tired of what you feel like is being done wrong, or you get tired of being ignored. But here's the thing, according to that verse in Galatians, isn't that in your outline, Galatians 6, 8, or 6, 9, and 10? It's not? Well, you should write it in there. Don't give up. It's kind of like what Tina was saying. Don't quit. Don't give up. Let's not be weary in doing well. If we're doing this thing right, you cannot afford to quit. You can't afford to give up. And God's promise is that you will reap if you don't faint, if you don't quit, if you don't walk away. You will reap a reward if you don't give up. Keep thinking thoughts toward love. Sunday is actually going to be, I think it's going to be a pretty good sermon. I actually worked on it a lot today. And it's on joy. Yeah, because that's the third Sunday in the Advent is the subject of joy. And I got amazingly close to some of this, thinking about and praying about and writing some of the stuff about joy. So I'm not going to reveal any of that tonight. You have to come back Sunday for that. I don't want this to sound mean or bad or degrading toward other people or even critical of others. But listen to this. You evaluate. The wrong others have done toward you is probably not because of you. It's because of them. Something that they got happening on the inside of them. many of the attacks that you get put under with people you work with or people in your neighborhood or people that you know or whatever, they come at you and they say things about you, but it really doesn't have anything to do with you. It's something on the inside of them that's not right. There's no way you can fix that, change that. You can't beat it out of a person. They just do what they do. But you can influence them by being the example of loving others like God said we should. You don't have to let it affect you. If you'll keep your thoughts true and right and noble, you can keep being God's example toward love. Now, that takes a lot, but it's up to you. And honestly, do you feel more like a winner if you let them push your buttons? I'm sorry, Tina, I'm not picking on you. If you let them push your buttons to the point where you go off on them, does that feel better than it would if you were just able to show them an example of your relationship with God that makes your thoughts toward love and you continue to act out in love? To me, I've had it both ways. I like it better when I just do it God's way. You know, the Bible says it heaps coals of fire on their head. You ever read that? Then I heard about one woman who said she dumped a whole pot of hot coffee on her husband. Didn't help at all. Well, I still think I just think that the best thing to do is always do it God's way. And if he says that we can overcome that tendency for selfish retaliation, we really should. And the only way we're ever going to be able to do that, control how we react, is by thinking the thoughts and the way that he has told us to think. 1 Thessalonians 4:9, it's God that teaches us to love one another, and that it should increase more and more. We should keep getting better instead of getting bitter. That's not what it says in the scripture, but it does say that we should keep getting better at this. We should learn to grow in loving one another, and our love for one another should increase more and more as time goes on. So we should get better and not bitter. Have you known anybody that just got bitter in their old age? You know, like up in their 50s and stuff. I've seen it. I've seen it. 1 Peter 1:22 says, purify your soul by obeying the truth through the Spirit, which produces greater love toward others. Purify your soul by just obeying the truth through the Spirit. There are those moments in time where your head will say, okay, I know I should be nice in this moment. I should show some act of love or concern or care. But I don't want to. And the Spirit inside of you, the Holy Spirit of God on the inside of you will check those emotions that want to take you the wrong direction in your thoughts and your actions, if we will allow him to. That's what he does. All right. Number 4. This is still on having thoughts toward love. I am God's messenger of love toward strangers. Toward strangers. As my love for God grows, my love for strangers will grow too. Hospitality is basically the word for love of strangers. Romans 12:13 says that we should be distributing to the necessity of the saints and given to hospitality. That is, loving those we do not know. Going out of our way to help somebody that we do not know. If you want to read about it, 1 Corinthians 12:28 talks about the gift, the spiritual gift of helps, where we're just there to help others. As a helper, we help other people. Hebrews 13:1 says, let brotherly love continue, be not forgetful to entertain strangers, for in doing so, some have entertained angels without knowing it. Is there anybody in here that thinks that you've actually met an angel and didn't know it at the time? Did you? Yeah? I'm not going to force you to share, but if you want to share, that'd be great. We'll get you a mic.
Long story short, my car went off the road out in the Flint Hills, and I went down a ravine and broke my neck and my shoulder blade and my ribs. And it was getting dark, and I could see the cars driving up on the road. I was down so far because I had been thrown out. And these two men came, and they were just so gentle and so kind. And they put a blanket on me, and the next thing, I passed out. I was in the hospital, and they said, where did this blanket come from? And I knew. I just knew it was angels. Because the pastor that morning was praying for the comings and goings of his sheep. So
That's good. You know, I'm amazed at the people who are believers but don't believe in stuff like that. You know, they're skeptical. Okay, go ahead.
I got a good one. I don't know if there was an angel in my truck. I don't know if there was a bunch or it only takes one, because they're pretty stout. Angels are. And so when I was rolling my Ranger on July 5th, 2019, I can't say if there was or not, but I took the brunt of it. But I think God sent somebody down there. It's like, yeah, Mike's going to need a hand in a second. You get in that truck with him. Can't say that. It's all speculation, but yeah.
Yeah, well, I think anybody in this room, if you only knew how many times an angel has intervened in your life and your daily routine, you'd be surprised for one, but you'd also be very thankful and acknowledge the love of our God toward us, because angels are sent as ministering spirits to help us that believe. But I think sometimes we encounter people, and we're not real sure what to do with them. I've had several of these encounters. We don't have time to go through all that stuff tonight, but the reality is hospitality is how you treat strangers. If God sends an angel your way, or God just sends a needy person your way, our response should be the same. Whether we recognize an angel, whether we don't, our response, our activity should be the same. Now, when is the last time that you did something that only love could do, that nobody else knew about? Has there been a situation where you have intervened in somebody's life to make it better, easier, and you just did it because of the love that was in your heart? You didn't have to tell anybody about it. I'm not going to ask you to tell us about it tonight. I'm just asking if you've done that, because the opportunities are everywhere. I'm going to share this story with you. I will share this story again. If I do this on Sunday mornings, I'll share this again. It's one of the greatest stories, and it reminds me of some people that I know. In a small town, a Christian business owner for 2 weeks noticed a significant increase in his profits when a customer informed him that his only competitor across town had been sick for 2 weeks, unable to open his store. The Christian businessman demonstrated true hospitality when he tallied up the profit that was above what he would have made on a normal 2-week basis, and he took that profit to the other businessman. That's something that I would have seen in our small town. We had one car part store that was owned by a Seventh-day Adventist, so they were not open on Saturday. And then we had one that was a Christian. They were not open on Sunday. But I could just see this happening with those guys. I knew both of them. I could just see this sort of thing happening. Is that the kind of stuff that we do? Or are we just, hey, a blessing of the Lord. My competitor's sick. I just think that there's opportunities like that all the time, all the way around. We need to exercise love for one another intentionally and randomly. We can find ways to do that. Men, do you pump gas for an elderly lady on a cold day when you see them get out and struggle with which side of the credit card goes in first? Do you help? This stuff, just little things, sometimes make such a big difference. It can make other people think that's not normal. I'm okay when people say I'm not normal. I'm not. I want to be God's guy all the time. And yeah, I've embarrassed myself a few times with, trying to. I know I've told y'all before about this lady that I seen her get out of her SUV, and she went and grabbed the windshield wiper squeegee thing, and she had a cast on one arm, and I thought, there's no way I'm going to let her wash her windshield with that. So I got out, and I walked over to her, and I said, I'm going to clean your windshield for you. She said, oh, I was going to clean all the windows. There's 27 windows on this SUV. It's like a Suburban or something, like a school bus. And so I cleaned every one of her windows for her. And you know what? That's not normal, right? But that's hospitality. That's just showing love toward a stranger. Something that we can do to help somebody else. Then, I'm not saying you need to wash windows for people at Quick Trip. I don't go to Quick Trip anymore because of that. No, it's not true. That's still my favorite place. There's all kinds of things that we can do that just reminds people of the love of God, right? That's inside of us. We can be that example, but we'll never be that example if we don't think thoughts toward love. All right, so the next 2 Wednesday nights, we're not going to have Wednesday night church. We're not going to have a meal because you got Christmas Day and then you got New Year's Day. We will do Tuesday night, Christmas Eve service, candle lighting service in here. So let me give you, is there still blanks on your page? Yes, no? Yeah, I really want to talk about that, but like I said, I'm going to talk about that on a Sunday morning. There's no blanks, though, in that section? There is. The human application for the word virtue is force or strength of mind or body. Force or strength of mind or body. Biblical terms, virtue just means power. It just means straight out power. It's the word dunamis, where we get our word dynamite. Number 2, praiseworthy refers to activities and actions that meet God's approval. And what you're going to see there when I get to this is that there's a lot of things that people do that just do not meet God's approval. And there's a lot of things that we might say that we do that sounds like God's approval, but it has no virtue or power attached to it. And if you can think through those things, I'll share more about it in the future at some point. But let's all stand together. What? Oh, is there another one?
God multiplies blank in my accomplishment, not in a crowd sense.
Strength. Yeah, strength. Okay, let's go. Stand up. Thanks for being here tonight. I appreciate that. Enjoy the next 2 Wednesday nights off with your family. hanging out and doing fun things. I know I'm going to try to do that. And if you don't have anybody telling you Merry Christmas, call me. I'll tell you Merry Christmas, and I'll also tell you Happy New Year. But I love you guys, and I love this church. I love our community. I do. I love our country. I just think that we've got the best opportunity on the planet to do some good stuff for God. And we'll just keep talking about it until we get to see it. Father, thank you so much for your mercy and your grace and the good things that you do for us. The good things you have done and the mercy that you've shown us, God, is incomparable to anything. There's just no other love like the kind of love that you show. Continue to work in us and through us. God, let your blessings be upon this church and on the people of this church. Give them strength and courage and wisdom in this Christmas season. Help them to see you in a very clear and wonderful way. Watch over them, protect them, keep them safe, keep them healthy also in all the things that they do. We ask it in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. God bless you guys. Have a good night.